Schellenberger, and to all the witnesses for your testimony. We now turn to questions from the committee. And as I've been asked to sit in as chair until Chairman Whitehouse returns, that means I get to ask my questions first. Dr. Moretti, take a deep breath because I'm going to tap into your experience and expertise here on a couple of topics. I want to discuss the increasing risks to the health and safety of workers who are exposed to dangerous heat conditions in the absence of adequate workplace protections. And despite Mr. Schellenberger's testimony, not all career paths enjoy the luxury of air conditioning. Farm workers are disproportionately at risk and die from heat-related illness at a rate 20 times greater than the average worker. That's why last session I co-led legislation with Senator Brown to direct OSHA to more swiftly establish a national standard to protect workers and ensure common sense workplace protections during extreme heat conditions. Farm work is just one example. A lot of times truck drivers, warehouse workers, others are exposed to extreme heat. This and other efforts to protect workers are critical policy components of climate adaptation. So, Doctor, as global temperatures continue to rise, what impacts should we expect to see on workers, and what additional steps can we take to protect vulnerable individuals, especially those in agriculture?
Thank you very much, Senator, for the question. I think you hit on a very important point, which is that there are certain populations that are very vulnerable, outdoor workers in particular. When they show up to the emergency department with heat stress or heat stroke, we treat them with IV fluids and we cool them down, but then we discharge them home, and they go home and they go back to work, and they're put at the same risk. The problem is that adaptation only gets us so far. We can only adapt to a certain level before those adaptation mechanisms start to fail us. And here is a prime example. The way that we protect those workers is that they don't work on really hot days where our bodies are not safe. That means they're not working. That means we're earning a wage, and it hurts our economy. So that's a severe limitation as our temperature starts to rise.
Yeah. And if you can just expand on that for a second, outside of mortality costs, that's what people tend to focus on. Can you just speak for a minute on the economic impacts or lost labor productivity as a result of unsafe working conditions?
Correct. So I don't have exact numbers, but I am happy to find them for you. But these are patients that I would tell not to work. I tell them not to work on certain heat days if possible. And I will tell you that there is a subset of my population that will not be able to listen to me, that will go to work regardless, and that will come back to the emergency department with the same problem I sent them out with. This is a huge, example out west. I was speaking to a colleague of mine during the wildfires who was treating asthmatics as a revolving door. He would treat them, they would get better, he would send them back out into the smoke, and a day later they would come back because he couldn't treat the underlying cause. He couldn't get to that root cause to treat them. So we, one, have increasing health costs because a lot of them are covered on Medicare and Medicaid. Two, we have their lost labor and they're unable to work out with sick days. And so we're losing economic drive on multiple fronts.
So, you're such an expert, you anticipated my next question, which is this, extreme heat oftentimes leads to fire. Along with fire, we get a lot of smoke. And Californians in the fire-prone areas of the state are exposed to smoke for an average of about 3 months per year, resulting in poor health outcomes that you've begun to describe, in addition to the economic losses and a reduced quality of life. As climate change continues to increase the frequency and severity of wildfires, more and more communities beyond just the western United States are impacted by these harmful effects. I know over the last couple of years, I'll get occasional calls from colleagues in the Midwest complaining about the smoke emanating from large fires in California, even on the colleagues on the East Coast. A recent study in Nature suggests that wildfire particulate matter may be 10 times more harmful than other sources of pollution. So given that wildfires are only growing more extreme and frequent, how can we better mitigate the impact of smoke-related health risks for our underserved and rural communities that are often most at risk?
So we talk about mitigation and we talk about adaptation. To mitigate these risks, we need to mitigate climate change, and we need to limit our fossil fuel combustion and that which is emitted. As an adaptation mechanism, we need to identify these at-risk populations, and we need to start to put in public health policies that protect them, such as allowing them to be indoors with air conditioners when it's safe, air purifiers when PM 2.5 levels get to dangerous levels. But these treatments happen before they get to me in the emergency department.
Thank you very much. Senator Grassley.
Thank you, Senator, Mr. Chairman. I want to read for